Hello, everyone, and welcome to session 3 of the Career Pathway series. We're excited to have you in attendance and excited to have Rhett and Serby here with us. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ben Warble, who will introduce just the Career Pathways project as a whole. Just so for some context, Ben is a current Flex student and Director of Communications at Village Capital, which is an org that finds, trains, and invests in impact startups. So Ben, kick us off.
Thanks, Carson. So my name is Ben. I'm a Flex student. This project came about a year and a half ago. It started with a conversation from the Net Impact Board where we talked about how if you're coming into Georgetown as a business school student, and you want to get a job in an impact-oriented career, it's not always clear what to do about it. You know, if you're looking to get into real estate, you have the Steer Center, and they can connect you to people and give you advice. If you get into consulting, we have a deep network of folks at the Big Four. But until recently, we didn't have a Steer Center for Impact. We now have Business for Impact, which was a generous sponsor of this report. And we don't have those same networks in the impact space. So this profile series, which Carson worked on, which a number of other students worked on, is a chance to speak to 7 students, including Serby and Rhett, and talk to them about literally what was their pathway. And I encourage you to actually look at the infographic on their profiles. How did they get from where they started their careers to the jobs they're at today? And it's often a winding path. Often looking at it can hopefully inspire you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from both of you today about your pathways. Thanks.
Excellent, thanks, Ben. Okay, so I'm going to kick us off with some introductions. So first, we're going to start with Serby. So as part of the coffee sustainability team at Starbucks, Serby is leading the effort to become more resource positive and reduce Starbucks' carbon, water, and waste footprint in the coffee supply chain, focusing specifically on reducing the footprint of on-farm activities, improving the environmental ecosystem in farming communities, and piloting digital tools to improve farmer livelihoods. Before this, Serby launched digital coffee traceability at Starbucks using blockchain technology to link the data to share the information from bean to cup with both customers and farmers. Serby has been working in Starbucks' supply chain since landing an internship as a McDonough student. Welcome, Serby. Next we have,
hello.
Oh, sorry, Serby, go ahead.
Saying hello.
Hello. Next we have Rhett, who is the Director of Operation at Boston's Roxbury Prep, which is part of Uncommon Schools. Uncommon Schools is a network of charter schools on the East Coast that serves tens of thousands of students a year and has seen remarkable results. 82% of their student population is economically disadvantaged, and that they managed to have a 99% college acceptance rate over 20 years. As operations leader at Boston's Roxbury Prep, Rhett focuses on the business side of the school with wide-ranging responsibilities from hiring to student retention to financing. As a McDonough student, Rhett interned with Inspiring Capital, a mission-driven consulting firm. Welcome, Rhett.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here, guys.
And then lastly, I'll introduce our moderator this evening, who is going to be William Lloyd, who is a second-year full-time MBA candidate pursuing both the Sustainability Certificate as well as the Non-Market Strategy Certificate in addition to his degree. Will serves as a student leader for MSB's Business for Impact Initiative, is a board member for our Net Impact chapter, and is the co-president of the Georgetown Explorers Club. So Will, I'll kick it over to you.
Super, thank you, Carson. And as we kick things off, I of course want to take a moment to thank Serby and Rhett for your continued time with this series and for sharing some further insights with us tonight. I was fortunate to hear from you both previously with Rhett, as I mentioned, from the Net Impact Spring Career Day way back when, and then with Serby at the Graduate Women in Business Conference some weeks prior. And I can say personally, I'm very much looking forward to hearing more from you both tonight. And then again, before we jump in, a continued expression of thanks to Ben Roble, Carson Ravoli, Muzna Abbas, BFI, and the whole team for this really, truly impressive series. This conversation undoubtedly would not be possible without their continued diligent work toward all of our shared benefit. And now, as we launch things off, I'll go ahead and share the pathway files, or they may have already been shared for Rhett and Serby. There in the Zoom chat with you guys. If you have not had a chance to check those out, it looks like Carson already did. She's way ahead of the game. I won't repost those. Check those out if you haven't yet. And then lastly, this event is for you, the audience. So please add any questions you have as they come up in the chat, or feel free to message them directly to Carson, Ben, or myself, and we'll be sure to get those to the panelists. All right, let's do it. And if you guys wouldn't mind, Serby and Red, as I may have mentioned, I'm going to simply popcorn between the two of you as we work through the questions that we've provided. But of course, if any questions speak to you, or if you'd like to jump in first, definitely feel free to do so. Jumping in, Serby, I'm going to let you take first at bat. So this is a favorite question of B schoolers, and our first year attendees will know this well now. TMAY, tell us a bit about yourself. And I'll add a fun moderator twist because that is my role as moderator. I also would like to hear you tell us your order from Starbucks and your favorite subject from school, not MSB related.
All right, thanks, William. My order from Starbucks is easy. We do this almost at every meeting, but our favorite coffees and all. But these days, our holiday beverages have launched, so peppermint mocha is a must. But before that, I was actually earlier this year, I was on maternity leave. I had my first baby earlier this year. She's now almost 11 months old. Thank you. It's been quite the year. And almost every day I would get almond milk honey flat white. So that's my drink of choice. Favorite subject in school, science. Yep. And now a little more about myself. So for my career, my background is in international development. Before business school, I was living and working abroad. I was in India for a couple of years with MIT Poverty Action Lab. Their sister organization in India doing development research on microfinance and on weather insurance for farmers. And through that work is how I got really interested in understanding the impact of business to farming communities and livelihoods. And I knew that, businesses play a strong role in supply chain. So I wanted to come back and focus on career in supply chain, connecting that in the business world. That's what, led me to get an MBA and come to Georgetown because I was really looking, I wanted to make sure I was coming to a school, as I'm sure you have seen, that believes in servant leadership and really the intersection of business and impact altogether. And through that, I came into Starbucks in a core supply chain sourcing role. That's exactly what I wanted to do post-business school, which understand the business. And since then, I've been able to move into traceability of our coffee supply chain and now our environmental sustainable footprint for our coffee supply chain. So it's been a great journey for me. And there's lots of paths that you can navigate this. So I'm happy to discuss more with you all.
Super. Thank you so much, Serby. All right, Rhett, on to you. Same question, TMAY and your order from Starbucks and your favorite subject from school.
All right, Starbucks. I'm actually not a coffee drinker, but I would get a green tea in a heartbeat, and often did at the Starbucks at MSB. I was a math guy. Loved calculus and pre-calculus and all that. Probably weird to say that, but those are my favorite subjects. A little bit about me and my background. I after undergrad, went into finance for 4 years and was, thought that was the career for me, and was an econ major in school. And it was not, wasn't fulfilling and didn't really see a career path or growth for me in that industry. So left and was a director at a summer camp for a couple years, which was awesome. And would definitely do that again in a heartbeat, from like a joy of work and liveliness standpoint. But really wanted to find the balance between the two, which kind of led me to business school. I've always been drawn to mission-driven work and passionate about some inequities and systemic issues that I feel like are solvable with the right strategies and businesses and people, and wanted to find that right blend. So business school was a good opportunity. It was a good launch to being a good leader in the industry, and set me up to be a strong manager in many ways. So education is one of the things that I'm most passionate about, and led me to a school. So I'm a director of operations, very much as close as you could get to the business side of education. And am lucky enough to be doing it in the middle of a pandemic, which has its own challenges, which again, I feel like I'm well suited for, and due to my background, and I think business school helps with a lot of that. Like it's all new to everybody, right? There's no playbook for this. And so throw the traditional strategies and models out the window, and you got to innovate in the moment. So that's definitely been a challenge, but definitely been a whirlwind of a year, not quite a year, I guess. So I'm happy to talk about any of that, or how I ended up in education, or nonprofits in general. The summer camp I worked at was part of the YMCA and part of a larger nonprofit organization now with Uncommon. So any questions around that, happy to answer.
Super. Thank you, Rhett. Well, this kind of led actually really nicely into this next question, which is to explore this a bit more. And Rhett, you did just speak to this, so feel free to expand on this or your current work in education. And apologies for the helicopters flying above. Really, the lasting value of this series is charting out the umpteen paths for how students can arrive at business school and where to take after business school. And I imagine many on this call, like myself, were considering other options for graduate school and for opportunities nationwide beyond coming to business school. So Rhett, if you'd mind, expanding a little bit on the path that motivated you to business school specifically and to MSB, and then Surbi, if you'd like to comment to this as well.
Yeah, happy to start. I think working in a nonprofit before business school, anybody that's worked in that space, there are a ton of inefficiencies and burnout and frustrations that you feel. But I knew the issues. I didn't know how to solve anything. And so I really think this idea of going back to school to get a degree that really focused on my thinking around how do you develop sustainable strategies around some of this, and really trying to think through solutions and driving towards making people more efficient and organizations more efficient, knowing funding is often scarce. That attracted me to business school. I think it naturally felt aligned with my skill set. I'm very much of what is the right brain or left brain? I don't remember which side, but the math side and the number side and the business side fit my skill set. And also I felt like was going to help me grow as a leader as well. And I dove into a role right after business school where I'm managing 40 people. I don't think I was ready for that before I came in, and I'm not sure I was ready for it when I came out to the full extent as maybe I should have been, but I guess you fake it till you make it. But business school definitely helped with that. And you work with a lot of different personalities, and you can take on a lot of different opportunities that will help build some of those people skills that you're going to need in any industry. And I knew that, and that was attractive to me. So that's kind of what led me to business school. I did not know I wanted to go into education specifically, but I knew there's going to be a lot of different opportunities for me to explore different interests, and was confident I was going to find the right next step.
Super. Surbi?
Thanks, Red. That's a very similar pathway I actually had as well. I mean, my background was in international development, as I said, and I was doing essentially working with nonprofit and research development. And as I was leading these projects, I again could think about the challenges that the farming communities were facing, but it was like, who are the actors that can create a systemic change in this, and not aid change, because the best type of aid is one that even partners that I speak to today within the aid industry, it's like, I got to work myself out of a job. Like this is not sustainable. So how do we find sustainable systemic solutions? Just prior to thinking about business school, I worked with the Village Capital, so where Ben's at, for some time, and really got to experience the impact investing space. And that showed me a new angle to thinking about problems and challenges that people are facing, and how can businesses be solutions for them. And so when I was looking at grad school, as many of you have probably looked at different options, I thought about public policy. I even thought about like a PhD in agriculture economics. I was thinking about food supply chains. And in the end, my undergrad was in international relations, and I knew like that was my area of expertise, and I need to really step out of my area into things that I'm not as comfortable with, which includes finance and accounting. And I had to really get those skills in and go to business school to really become understand what the business world is like, and then see how I can make a change through that platform. So that's really what led me to come to business school.
Right on. Well, you guys are queuing me up really nicely. I think this next idea that we want to talk about is the intentionality that it requires to pursue a career in impact. And again, one of the values of this series is for us to illuminate from wonderful speakers like you guys the required attention that you come through to really focus on where your path may lead. So as you're navigating opportunities and as you're finding ways to advance your own career, Rhett talking about jumping into managing a group of people, and then Surabhi, as you mentioned, with that internship into a long-term offer. How does intentionality play a role in your impact-oriented career and in impact-oriented careers in general? Like keeping that common.
I would just say 100%. I mean, it's all about your intentionality, and it's also about your viewpoint, right? So I think it's important to understand that impact doesn't just come from being in traditional CSR roles or, being in that social arm of an organization, or just only being down the nonprofit side. I think intentionality comes from the work that you decide you want to undertake, and then how you can influence your leaders to understand the intersections with the social impact that they can have on the ground that can lead to business results. I think once you're able to do that again and again and show business leaders the value of doing something, not just because it's the right thing to do in the world, but because it's also the right thing to do for their business strategy, then I think you've found like a win-win on both sides. And that takes 100% focus. It's too easy to get lost. It's too easy to get sidetracked because that's unfortunately, I think, more of the way our world currently operates. So for you to think about it of having an impact-oriented career, you have to be 100% intentional about it. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree with Surabhi here. You don't need to go into a nonprofit or any specific industry to have an impact. Like every business has a social impact. Most of it's not good. And so if everyone had this intentional lens to it, it'd make a huge impact. And in any role you go into, you can do that. I will speak more to the nonprofit space and education space because that's where I'm in. You have to have this if you want to go into there, because if that's not part of your approach to this work or finding a role in education, let's say, you're not going to be happy in it. You're going to be underpaid and unhappy. And that's not to say you can't find good paying jobs. You certainly can, but not as well as finance or not as well as consulting. And so if you're not intentional with that decision or approach to how you want to, how you view impact in your work, then it will be a struggle. But I think everyone here has that desire, right? But you need to set the course for it. No one's going to tell you how to do it. No one's going to tell you what impact you're going to have. You have to be very intentional with your goals and what you want to get out of it. And some organizations will help because they're like, hey, here's our mission, and some won't. But regardless of what it is, there is going to be an impact. And so it's just deciding of what that impact's going to be.
Very well said. And I think, again, as you can continue to build on this, building on intentionality and cultivating a community to advance the business case and move beyond the moral case for impact, as you guys have both touched on here. How do you find that community? Where do you go for like-minded people, and how do you network in this space? How have you found that in your careers and in your path at McDonough? Let's go to Surabhi first.
I think in my career so far, I've often leveraged conferences as a way to connect with others. last year on this very day, I was presenting on a panel for the Global Washington Conference, which brings together many of the local companies here, which there's quite a lot of here in the Seattle area. And I was on a panel on traceability and supply chain with colleagues. There's another person from Costco and seafood supply chain. And I think that's just interesting because it could be a very different product area focus, but in terms of the goals and functions, there can be a great overlap. This year, there have been a lot of digital conferences. ICTC for Ag was actually happening today. And I think this year specifically, it's gotten harder because it seems like, oh, everything is digital. You could attend everything, but you just don't have time to attend everything. And then you always say you're going to watch that session later that's recorded. And then, when do you get time for that? So I think, but the conferences I found are a great way because others that register are also like-minded individuals. And in my work scope, I deal with building partnerships in our environmental sustainability work, and that includes connecting with other for-profits, nonprofits, government agencies, and that's also been a great way for me to connect with others through my direct work.
Yeah, I think it's just the people I interact with day to day. Everyone I interact with from a work standpoint is in the education industry. And so it's easy to build pathways there. And so just being open and building those relationships with peers and colleagues or service providers, whatever it might be. I also go to some conferences. So was it last spring or 2 springs ago? I went to the South by Southwest Education Conference. And actually there met a startup that was based in Boston, where my school is, that helps high school seniors with college placement and application process. And they started working with our kids. So like there's great ways to build some meaningful business connections at those that have direct impact on our kids. And just like it's a good personal connection as well. So conferences are always a great way, especially if it's industry with an industry lens. It's going to be a great way to build career and career connections. So I agree with all those, and I think that's similar to the approach I took when I was in school as well.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you guys both, injecting the virtual challenges and some of the ways that you've, navigated that, because that is obviously something that we're all facing in this new world and likely will continue to face for the near future. But I want to bring it back and kind of narrow it down a little bit with a very similar question. Thinking about, what resources and what communities and what connections did you guys use during your time at MSB? What were the areas of impact and the conversations and things that proved most valuable to you for your time here at Georgetown? And you can expand it beyond that too, but really just thinking about those MSB connections and Georgetown connections. Let's go with Rhett to start this one.
Okay, yeah, I can start. Net impact definitely helped. I think that opened the most doors for me from a career standpoint. And so definitely find the right club or different. I mean, you guys are here, so that's how that you're doing something right. I think, Sarah, you were the president of Net Impact when I first started, right? I think you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I got paired up with my internship, which was a great opportunity in New York for the summer. I was at Inspiring Capital doing a nonprofit consulting project, which also was a great way to meet people from other schools and some startups in the area and some other mission-driven organizations in the area, which was great. I think there are non-Georgetown events that are posted on various sites that are worth checking out. You go to some, and if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. If you don't like cold networking, it can be hard, but some of them actually are really worthwhile. And there's good panel discussions where you go talk to the panelists afterwards. Like that's a great way and a great resource that I use a lot. I think I did the non-market strategies, and it forced you to go to, I don't know if they still do this, but they forced you to go to a certain amount of events each year. And that was a great, like, I liked that push to get me out there and look up how many events were going on. And then you realize, whoa, DC is full of different opportunities. And especially now, it's all virtual. That doesn't even need to be in DC. It can be in probably almost any city. But take advantage of talking to the panelists afterwards, because that's like one of the best ways to connect with people and learn about their path. Because that's ultimately what you're looking for. Like, if you have all these lofty dreams, like I want to do this and this, well, you got to figure out how people got there. There's very few like linear paths in this world, and everyone has a different story. And so figuring out how yours can fit into that, you're only going to learn that the more you ask people their own paths and drawing some of those connections.
Yep, I completely agree, Rhett. It's talk to as many people as you can in different industries, and just like exactly what I think this Pathways webinars have been for you guys. Just thinking, can I imagine myself doing that type of work? I think that is a helpful question to start, and it can be even traditional business, panels and opportunities. Don't disregard just, if there is a finance panel or a consulting panel, because there's so much work in sustainable finance and impact investing right now that's making a big impact if you think about careers and impact. So I would say be open to understanding what different industries have to offer in these career pathways. Rhett mentioned Net Impact, which was awesome. The Net Impact Conference was also a great way to connect with people nationally. When I was there, the DC Net Impact chapter was quite very active, and that was a great way, because so many people in DC are within careers of impact, that it was a great way to network in the social events. I was also part of the Global Social Enterprise Initiative, GSCI, when I was there. I'm not sure if it's still there. Maybe Will can answer that.
Yeah, they've rebranded. This is now called the Business for Impact Initiative, who actually were, as Ben mentioned at the start, one of the big funders for this speaker series.
Yep. And that was a good way at that time to network, not just within McDonough, but within other parts of Georgetown itself, which was pretty neat. So there were undergrad students and grad students from other programs that were part of that work. And I was also a research assistant for Professor Ernst in supply chain. And I think those are interesting opportunities because they also have their network, the professors. So don't forget to think about who are professors, what are their areas of expertise, and how can you connect with them outside of the traditional classroom learning to go deeper into their research work if that's of interest to you. And I was also part of the consortium, which maybe some of you here may know of that or are part of that. And that was a great way to connect with others across different grad school programs, other MBA programs. And I actually got my internship through the consortium.
Super. Those are all super valuable. And I'll kind of amplify a couple of those from my personal experience in my short time at MSB. They're still doing non-market strategy certificate. I'm one of the candidates to receive this as well. And I similarly agree. The events are so cool. And the fact that I got credit for going is really impressive. And then the Net Impact local DC chapter, certainly worth being involved with if you can. They're a great organization, just like the club chapter, but they do ongoing series. If you're in Net Impact, which you likely all are, you've probably seen us repost some of their events. And then the last thing that Survey mentioned about being a graduate assistant or research assistant or a TA, if there are professors that speak to you and you want to connect with, I would certainly advocate in doing that. I've found immense value in connecting with some and look forward to more GA positions for the second semester. I will want to make another plug. This is your guys' event, so I would love some questions from the audience. If you guys are interested, please begin to post those in the chat. Feel free to also raise your hand if you have a burning question. But I have another question for the panelists as we kind of move through. This is, I think, very top of mind for many students as we're in the throes of recruiting and seemingly always in the throes of recruiting while in business school. How did you guys stay on this impact path? I can say we always see our consultant peers, we see our financial services peers going on what is a very well-worn and clear pathway towards a final offer and towards a career. So if you guys would say a bit more about your intentionality and your attention to the impact path when other, clearer ladders present themselves. And let's go with Serby this time. I think we had Rhett last time, so I'm doing a bad job of doing the popcorn I said I was going to do.
No worries. I think for my internship, as I mentioned, I was recruiting through the consortium conference. And when I went into the conference, I was super focused on supply chain, and I ideally wanted an intersectionality with food. So I think I was one of the rare people that comes to business school being like, this is what I want to do, and trying to figure out how do I get there. And with the conference after that, I had a offer to have an internship with Starbucks in food supply chain with Kraft. And that was in Chicago when we had gone for, I'd gone for the interview, but that was in marketing, not in supply chain. And then I had it with J&J in supply chain. So as you can see, like, even though I was like very focused on what I wanted to do, I did end up talking to a variety of companies. And I think it's very easy to get like sucked into the language and the talk of what everybody has to offer, and it sounds great. And I looked at the mission and value, and specifically for at that time, like Johnson was doing a great supply chain rotational development program, which would have been an incredible opportunity to really learn supply chain end to end. And I talked to both companies and just got a feel of the culture and the mission and values of the company. And for me, Starbucks really resonated with their mission and values. And I came here and was able to navigate my career into what I'm doing now. But I think it's not always easy to stay focused. In second year, because I had only really interviewed during the consortium time, and it was like, Georgetown offers a lot of resources. So you're like, well, I should take the most advantage of it, and I should try other things. So I think it's good to explore, but don't get too distracted. I think there's always this and don't put so much pressure on yourself to, try to do it all. You have to make the most of business school, but also not have FOMO and say you're going to be in all those different panels and try to have, interview in these various places. So I know I shared a few things there, but I would say that for you to stay focused, you have to be the driver of that. When you find, and this is even in career, post business school, it's very easy as you're navigating your career and growth trajectory, even as you say, you can grow in this space, but how far away will that move you from the impact that you want to create? Remember, impact is your definition of what you are giving to the world and to yourself. So I think that would be my only advice is you got to keep adjusting your compass to your true north. Explore, because that's where you're going to learn, be uncomfortable, and then continue to adjust from your learnings.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think what I would say to this is I came in not knowing what I wanted to do necessarily. I didn't have as narrow a focus. I knew what I didn't want to do. Which may be helpful and maybe worth noting what doesn't interest you. I think the part to nail down is what functions attract you, and that's what you want to chase, right? You want the type of organization, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it does, and you want to find the right fit, but what you're doing is more important. You can work at almost any company in a strategy or operations role if that's what you're interested in, and that's ultimately what I was interested in doing. And so those are the opportunities I sought out. I wasn't just looking for an organization, right? I wasn't just looking for a big nonprofit that I wanted to work for. I was looking for a specific type of role. And so focus on what you're interested in, and classes are helpful in helping know what you like and what you're good at, because that will help kind of focus on the functions of it, because the function matters more than the company at the end of the day. That doesn't mean the company doesn't matter, because it does. You want to find a good fit, and that's what Serby talked about a little bit. You find the right function, and then it comes down to which culture fits best. But you're only able to make that decision if you really truly know what type of role you want to play in an organization. And that's how I stayed focused, right? The finance and consulting tracks, it didn't bother me that my friends were on these very defined paths, but that's a personal decision everyone's got to make. You got to be a little more uncomfortable with not getting an offer in November, but that's okay. You don't need to get an offer in November because there's plenty of stuff coming in the spring. I had friends get offers in May for some awesome summer opportunities. And that's the reality of it is you don't need to know early because there's going to be tons of opportunities. I remember I settled on an opportunity that I was really excited about. It was a great opportunity. And looking back, it was the right opportunity for me. But I remember like things would pop up in May. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. Do I want to stay where I'm going? And ultimately did. And for all the, and it was a great fit, but don't be worried about that stuff because stuff will come up. And so the timing of it, you just got to get comfortable with. But yeah, I would push people to say, function first, figure out what you physically want to be doing day to day, and then figure out where you want to do it.
Those are always welcome. You guys crushed that last question. I think we can just have that on repeat for us as we're going through recruiting and needing to hear these things. So we got some awesome questions in the chat. If people feel comfortable unmuting and asking them, they're welcome to. If not, I'm happy to read them. Hannah, would you like to lead off with your question, or I'm happy to read it for you?
Sure, I can. Thank you both for your wonderful insights and pieces of advice. So my question is, how do you think your social impact experiences, whether it's before the MBA, during an internship, or other experiences post MBA, have really made you stand out as a candidate when you've been recruiting for other opportunities, whether that's internal to your organizations or just otherwise? How has it made your story different?
For me, I can say that when I was recruiting at Starbucks, it was, and I would still say when I joined the supply chain organization, I was one of the very few people that had an international development background, right? So I think what it does for me, it's like it made me more interesting, just that portion, like, in terms of like skills and what I'm bringing, like I'm in business school to learn that, right? That's why I came here, and that's how I'm going to deliver value to your enterprise. But when you are just networking with people and just wanting to have those intro conversations to say that, hey, this is my background and this is what I want to do, I think for me it was just that conversation starter to say, hey, I was working with farmers in India on the rice belt, and I learned the challenges they had in supply chain. And I can think about how coffee farmers have similar challenges for Starbucks. And I think that it was just interesting for that conversation starter. I also think companies are looking for varied perspectives. So if you just have, you're only from the business world, or you've only done supply chain, and I think you bring a myopic vision to what you can contribute. And I think just having your social impact background is, if you can leverage that to show how it's going to provide value to the business and the unique perspective that you'll bring, I think that will be definitely valued in your interviews.
Yeah, I'll talk more on the nonprofit side because I think it's actually different than the private sector. You have to fit the mission. Like if you don't speak towards their mission, or you don't have the passion for that work, it's probably not a good fit, and they're probably not going to hire you. But you need the hard skills, and this is where the nonprofit sector often falls short. Is there is a lack of hard skills, at least in a sustainable way, and people often talk about getting burned out because you're doing 100 different roles, and that part can be true, but not if you have the right people in all the right roles with the right hard skills. So I do think like if you're interested in going to like a truly like nonprofit mission driven organization, having this background where you actually can bring really hard skills that are refined is going to be a huge asset to companies that probably don't have it, or at least to the level that you guys can bring. And so sell that, right? Like it is fine to go to a nonprofit and talk about their mission and how you're passionate about that work. They want to hear that. I'm not going to hire someone if they don't talk about that they love working with kids. but ultimately we need the skills, and that's what you guys got to sell. You got to sell that because that's what you guys are all bringing. And so don't undersell that, and don't think it's assumed. Like that. That's really important to have that.
Right. I really like that. It's like know your audience, right? So you got to cater your background to reflect how you're going to drive value to whoever it is that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super high value. An excellent question. Thank you, Hannah. And those were great remarks. Thank you, guys. The next question in the chat is from Amanda. Amanda, if you'd like to go off mute and ask your question, you're welcome to. I'm happy to read it for you.
Yeah, sure. So this is a question for both panelists, and thank you both for taking the time to be here today. So semi-related to what we were discussing, but looking back, are there any skills you wish you had developed while you were at MSB that you think would have benefited you in your current career journey?
I would say there's like always a wish list because I consider myself an avid learner. I think the thing with skills is that if you don't use them as often, you will lose them. And especially, so for example, I came to business school and I did take a lot of data-driven courses. I took Professor Babbage's classes. I ran modeling, and I honestly have not used that as much over the last few years. And it's like a skill that if you were to ask me today, I said, okay, yeah, I would love to do that again. Because I think down the line, it would be helpful for my job. But if I don't continuously use it, it's like, again, I need a refresher course to understand, hey, what were the commands for me to be able to derive something from this type of data? So I think that's one. It's always hard because it depends on the job that you're applying for. On the other hand, I think never shy away from a job that you want to apply for because you feel like you don't have the skills for it. I'll just share an example. When I was in supply chain and I saw this role come up within my organization on traceability in the coffee supply chain, I was like, that's me. Like, that's what I came to this company for. Like, I've been doing supply chain and it's been great. I understand the business, but I don't feel like I'm driving the impact that I want to. It's been 2 years. I want to be in this role. And one of the key criterias was like an understanding of blockchain and supply chain. And I was like, there were no courses on that when I was at MSB. I haven't taken anything. And I almost was like convincing myself, like, I don't think I could do this job. And then my partner, he was like, who knows what supply chain and blockchain can do? Like, who is the expert on this? Nobody. Like, it's a new field. This was 3 years ago when I was applying for it. And I just took online courses to understand what blockchain was all about before I interviewed, so I could speak knowledgeably about it. And it was perfect because when I got into the role and we were figuring it out, I learned as I went along, just like everybody else on my team, including my tech partners, because nobody had done it before. So I think that was my big learning, that don't be shy. If you see something on there that you may not have as much knowledge about. If I apply for a role and it says you have to have SQL knowledge, I'll take a starter course on SQL before I go for the interview. Like, you can do it if you're really passionate and you know that's what you want to do.
Can I jump in with a quick follow-up question on that? I'm really blown away by that comment about good for you, finding that role that really jazzed you and finding a way to speak intelligently about something that I've never heard of, frankly. I'm curious, in that setting, how did you portray that knowledge? Did you feel that you had to disclaim that you learned it online? Was there a question about your experience professionally doing it, or was it not a big deal at all?
I mean, of course it came up. It was like, I had 4 rounds of interviews, even though I was internally applying for this role. And in 2 of them, it was like, well, so blockchain and supply chain, like, what are your thoughts? And for me, it was just what I had read from the industry knowledge and from the course. But honestly, like, the interviewers did not even know as much as I did at that point, right? Like, you have to understand, like, I don't want to say like you fake it till you make it, because for me, I'm like very cautious. I'm more on the cautious side where I want to make sure that I have it right before I present it. And and this was like, hey, I did like 10 hours of courses on this. And for me, I feel like that's prepared me enough for this interview. And I think it's okay to acknowledge like, hey, this is an emerging field and I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to learn. And I think just showcasing that you took time and effort to learn and that you're willing to do it again, I think that is important. Because whatever, like 5 years from now, the technologies that are going to be out there, we are not going to be learning about them today. We have to learn like on the fly as we keep growing in our careers. Right now, I'm doing a lot of work on digital tools for farmers, and I'm learning about like satellite imaging, remote sensors, drones. What's the cost of that? How do we implement something like that? I couldn't have learned this anywhere. It's just like talking to more ag tech companies and seeing like, okay, this is what these different people have to offer. So I think just making sure you stay curious and don't sell yourself short. Continue to learn.
Thank you.
Nice. Rhett, would you like to add anything to that question on skills you like to develop at MSP?
No, I thought that was a really good answer. I don't think people can take enough public speaking courses, and not just like the ones where you present a presentation, but like the actual like focus on just public speaking every single time. It's a skill that you need and is not going anywhere and will not get better unless you refine it and practice it. So I took one course on it, wish I had taken more, but definitely a skill I think everyone needs.
Nice, right on.
Yep.
Well,
and
Sam,
to that, I would also
please.
add, don't undersell the soft skill courses because that's really how you drive work anywhere that you go. Learning to manage conflict, cross-functional collaboration. You're doing that with your own group. Like that's why I think the group work was so important. Learning to work with different people. And even the leadership courses that I remember were on the soft skill side. They're super important because it's not just about the job. It's like, how do you get the job done in a way that you feel at peace and happy with the work that you're doing as a team? There's always going to be conflict. So you have to figure out how do you maneuver that, because different orgs and businesses will have different priorities and you got to get something done. So I'd say don't undersell those as well.
Super valuable addition there, Serbi. And I'll mention this plug too. If you haven't checked out the Career Pathways series, you can see some of their favorite classes that they mentioned, which are super worthwhile. And then also as like a role of stewardship from us as the current board of Net Impact and as second years, please reach out to us and any other elder students at MSP. I'd be happy to share classes that I found really valuable. I think that's a really fruitful place to tap into and get an honest read on where you can find skills to develop and things that were valuable. Okay, another great question in the chat. Sam, if you'd like to ask your question.
And thanks to both of you. So I really related to what you said, Rhett, because I also worked in nonprofit education before, and what you said about inefficiencies and burnout. So I'm curious if you feel that's still your experience right now in your job, and if it isn't, is it because of the skills that you got at MBA, entering in a new role where you chose to work? And I guess this is also actually a broader question for Serbi, also for choosing organizations that essentially fertile ground for you to work in, whether from Rhett, your perspective, that it's able to be more efficient in the nonprofit, or from the corporate side that there's actual willing to walk the walk in the whatever sort of social impact programs they have there.
Yeah, my experience and perspective has definitely changed. We run a incredibly high functioning school right now, and I do not feel the burnout that I felt at an organization that I didn't feel like was running very well. Part of that is I get to pull a lot of those levers, and that is fulfilling and has helped me feel like it's more sustainable. But it requires the right people, right? Like my job is not easy if I don't have really talented teachers that want to stay year over year, or really talented staff. But yeah, I think my burnout is like what functionally, like what's my next role? And I think I'm always looking for like growth, and I don't know if I'm not gonna stay here forever, right? But the burnout of just like I'm doing too much and like this is terrible, I don't feel that anymore. So like it is possible to have very high functioning organizations that are nonprofits or technically a public publicly funded school. And so it is possible, but it requires the right people, and you got to make it sustainable for those people. And that's been a lot of my work over the last 4 years.
Thanks, Brett. And I think the only thing to add is like burnout can be different perspectives. So in the nonprofit, perhaps it seems like from inefficiencies in the system. In Seattle, I have a few friends from MSB who went to Amazon, burnt out and left the company as well. Not a nonprofit, but a totally different type of burnout, right? So I think you got to find the company that's best for you and your work. And this is nothing against Amazon. Amazon also has really, a lot of MSP people are still there. And I think it's just about finding the right role. In the end, like, I don't think people leave, having had like multiple managers over the years as well. I really think a manager makes a big difference into your growth and development, your satisfaction with your role, and the type of ownership and impact you feel like you can have. So whatever org you're in, whatever company you go to, I think it's about navigating and finding that for you as well, which is really hard.
Thank you.
Yeah, super, super valuable and completely agree. We constantly reinforce this in the classroom. Michaela with another wonderful question in the chat. Michaela, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah.
Or I can read it if, cool.
Yeah, thank you both for being here. So Rhett, more of a question for you, just being an educator. Where do you think education is going post-pandemic? Naturally, you said that this is a completely new experience for you and all of your colleagues. Do you feel virtual learning is going to grow even further? You know, is there opportunities in healthcare for your students? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. I don't think people in the industry are spending enough time talking about this, because it is changing and it's going to change, and we're not going back to the old normal that we knew of 100%. But people aren't talking about it enough, because we still need to figure out how to get people education right now. And the complexities of doing that with very limited budgets is hard. Access to computers and internet and all that is not universal, and so that's like a hurdle that we're all trying to tackle now, and making sure kids don't fall too far behind. I do think it's changing though. I do think the new world, or what schools will look like a year to 5 years down the road, is going to be very different than what it looked like on March 13th when we closed in the spring. And I think technology is going to play a bigger role. I don't think virtual school, well, let me take that back. I think the older you get, the more viable virtual school will become, just like I think the more viable virtual work is going to become for some people. But I don't think we're going to replace classrooms for younger, probably high school and lower. But I think technology is going to play a much bigger role, and I don't think we're talking enough about it. But I also recognize I don't think people have the capacity right now. So it's a balancing game, but I think it's changing for sure.
Thanks.
Serbia, I'd like to extend this question to you actually too, as like an increasingly drunk off the Kool-Aid sustainability nerd. If you wouldn't mind, myself, I mean, in this sustainability candidate certificate that I'm on, if you wouldn't mind sharing where the sustainability industry, traceability, and how this has impacted you from the pandemic and COVID, and where we see things trending.
I think with the pandemic this year, it's impacted a lot of our farming communities in different ways. So in coffee, most farmers go to a centralized washing station to deliver their coffee. Because of the pandemic, at times, depending on the harvest season in the country, sometimes roads were closed or farmers couldn't reach the washing station, and because of again, safety reasons, and it impacted their livelihoods. So I think even, beyond just sustainability, it's like, there's an emergency relief fund that Starbucks has to support farming communities that have been impacted before because of coffee pricing, now because of COVID as well. So I think it's also impacting our agronomists' ability to provide trainings on the ground, again, digital trainings, but farmers don't have access to the digital tools that we even think about. Like, what does that really mean for smallholders? So it's complex, which I feel like is a different segment to go down that path. I've got one question for Rhett, actually, if it's okay.
Yeah,
because I haven't
please.
seen you in a while, Rhett. And I remember us when we could all be together at MSB. What is something that you wish you had known 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when you were still in business school, that you know now as you're like graduating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it actually goes to a point you made earlier, Serby, about I think I was a lot more qualified for things than I realized. And you take a step back and you get into some of these roles. And you know, when I got my internship in the summer, you realize like, oh, like there's so many parts of this that I didn't know. And I read this, I'm like, I don't check all these boxes. Well, no one checks all the boxes. If everybody checked all the boxes, then the salary doesn't match what they want. And so I think just if I could have told myself 4 years ago, like, you're actually qualified for a lot more than you think you are. And you're gonna know a lot more when you go into these than you think you do. You're not gonna be the new person in the work like you have been in the past. So, you know, you're not going into entry-level positions where you know nothing. You may not know anything about the company or the business, but day one, you're gonna bring a lot to it. And I don't think I realized that. And I think that was something that I don't know if it would have changed the path I took, but there's like almost like a confidence piece of like, I actually know a lot more than I thought I did. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was a great question, Serby. Thank you so much for asking that. We have about 1 minute left, so we'll make a final plug. The Net Impact in Emerging Markets and Clean Energy Career Day is on Friday. Please register, please attend. Serby, as with our last minute, if you wouldn't mind putting this question back on yourself. What are these things that you wish that you knew as you began? We would love to hear this to kind of close us out. And again, thank you all so much. There's no more topical time to talk about sustainability and education than right now.
I think for me, I was so focused on like my career and thinking like what I want to do next. You know, I don't think I like envisioned my full life events at that time. Like I was not married. I didn't have a kid. Like all of this has happened in the last 5 years for me. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in like the career part. And after business school, I got engaged. I met my husband at MSB. Actually, we were both Hoya cohort together. So, you know, part of me had wanted to do consulting, and I had applied for consulting, supply chain consulting. I had an offer in my second year as well. And as I was debating between the two, I said, okay, I want to get industry experience and just go straight to Starbucks. And now that I think about it with like my 11-month baby, I'm like, I don't know if I could ever do that, you know? And so sometimes I feel like, and again, it's like, not that, you know, it's not any regrets or anything, but it's about like, even thinking about your whole life, like career is just a part of it. Just not to forget about the other things that are also going to come up in life for you. Yeah.
What a lovely close. You guys were so wonderful. Thank you both so much for your time. This was fantastic. I feel so fortunate to be involved. Carson, if you want to close out with any final words, I know some people probably have a class right now, myself included, so we may have to jump quickly. But again, thank you guys so much.
No, just if there are any questions that you wanted to ask that didn't get answered, please send them my way and I can send them to the panelists. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks guys. Serby, great seeing you again.
Great to see you too, Red. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, see you.
Thanks, everyone.